So again, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Liz Christofferson. I'm the owner of Empower Consulting Group. I'm the sponsor host and moderator for today's session. And I want to give special thanks to the Women's Business Center, Mission Community Services, the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, our SBDC here on the Central Coast, and SCORE San Luis Obispo, because it was these organizations who came together and said, let's provide this informational session for the entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs in our community. So I just want to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. And then I'll introduce our guests and then we'll just jump right into it. So we do have a large audience. Some of you are joining via computer and some of you are joining by phone. Out of respect for time and for each other, please make sure to limit your distractions. You want to mute your phone or your mic. Our session is being recorded, so if you miss a portion or for some reason you have to leave early, just know that access to the recording will be provided later. We have already received some questions for our panelists, and we're going to be taking questions by topic as it is discussed. So if you have a question and it's about the topic we're discussing, please type your question into the question section of the control panel, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can during the time that we have allowed. So on behalf of our presenters and organizers, thank you so much for your participation. We're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, I want to share with you that we have two amazing ladies joining us today. Judy Mahan, who is with the Cal Poly CIE Small Business Development Center, and Lorna Whitaker with Business Beyond the Shoebox. And Judy plays a dual role. So in addition to the Hot House, assisting in business development, she also manages the pool of consultants who support the Small Business Development Center. So Judy, thank you so much. We're glad to have you here. And Judy's going to be sharing with us in a couple minutes about the Economic Injury Disaster Loans and the Paycheck Protection Program. And then also with us this morning or this afternoon, we have Lorna. And Lorna's going to be covering unemployment insurance for the self-employed. Lorna is a financial expert. As I said, she's the owner of Business Beyond the Shoebox, and she's also a SCORE mentor and serves on the executive board for SCORE. So again, ladies, thank you so very much for being here today. We're really grateful that you were able to join us and share the information that you have about these two really important initiatives that are designed to help small businesses in our community and in our nation. So I'm going to dive right in and head right to this Small Business Administration. So Judy, why don't we start with you? What can you tell us about the funding programs that the Small Business Administration has set up for us, and what are the things that we need to know? So if you can share with us a little bit, and then I will give you the questions that I've received and see which questions we have in the question box.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to share information. We're in contact daily, if not multiple times a day, with the SBA. So I'm hoping that I'm sharing the most up-to-date information with all of you. Basically, what we're telling our local businesses is that there are two pathways right now available for accessing disaster loan assistance. The first one is the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That pathway was created approximately 2 weeks ago. Some businesses did apply 2 weeks ago. There's been 3 versions of the portal on the SBA that have come about over the last 2 weeks. So depending on when you applied on a different version of the portal. Either way, everyone will be treated the exact same way. So there is no concern to be had at that level. You have shared the link for the EIDL loan application. This is a loan that the business owner has to apply for directly with the SBA through that portal. The latest version, version 3 that came out on Monday, and this is the one you're seeing on your screen right now, is a super simplified version of the application. It should not take you more than 10 to 15 minutes to get through this application process. The bottom line is you need to know what are your COGS for your business in 2019. So approximately what are your expenses for that year, and your revenue for that year. And based on that, a case manager will be in touch with you, will ask you for additional backup documentation to determine what the final amount of the loan will be that you can qualify for. As a rule of thumb, what we've heard is that they will take basically your average monthly expense for 2019 to run your business multiplied by 6. So basically 6 months of working capital will be offered. That's the cap. And it is the lesser of that amount, or $2 million per business. $2 million is the maximum amount of the loan that can be awarded through EIDL. The terms of the loan, it's a 30-year term. The interest rate is 3.75%. Payment will be deferred for a full 12 months. So you will not owe any payments on that loan for 12 months. For those of you that applied prior to Monday, you need to apply again immediately in order to get access to a $10,000 emergency grant. So everyone who applies for EIDL may be able to qualify for up to $10,000 in an emergency grant. So the SBA is not calling it a grant, they're calling it an advance on the loan, but that advance will be immediately forgiven. You do not need to pay it back. So the SBA is calling it an advance on the loan, but truly, I mean, the reality of how it works is it is a grant. You do not need to pay it back. So anyone who applied prior to Monday, please apply again immediately to qualify for that $10,000 grant. We're seeing people who applied Monday morning just started receiving their grants yesterday. That grant money, and again, the SBA does not want to call it a grant. I'm the one who's calling it a grant because I want to make it clear that you don't have to pay it back. We've seen a few businesses start to receive that money as of yesterday. It is transferred into the checking account of your business directly by the SBA. So when you do fill out the EIDL application, the one that's up on your screen, they are going to ask you if your checking account number for your business and the routing number of your bank. So you must have those two items readily available when you fill out the loan application: the checking account number and the routing number for your bank. Routing numbers are available online. Just Google, if you're with Chase, just Google Chase routing number California, and the routing number will pop up in your Google search. You can just plug that in. So that's all the information around EIDL. Some of the other qualifiers is you obviously need to be a small business, i.e. less than 500 employees. If you happen to have more than 500 employees, you can also check according to your NAICS code, your NAICS code. Certain businesses, especially certain types of farming operations, most farming operations are excluded from EIDL. You will need to check with USDA. However, if you're deemed a small business, you can qualify. You may have more than 500 employees, but if under your NAICS code you make less than a certain revenue amount, you can still qualify for EIDL. So a couple things to look at. I know that won't concern too many of our client base here in SoCal County, but for those of you who are in that zone of more than 500 employees within a certain industry sector, contact us and we'll try and help you troubleshoot that to figure out whether or not you qualify. So the rule of thumb is less than 500 employees. What else can I tell you on that? That's sort of
well, let me
yeah.
I have a couple of questions here that came in through the registration system. So I want to get to those first because these are in particular about EIDL. And then I'll look through the chat to see if there's any questions there specific to EIDL. So if I apply for the EIDL loan grant for $10,000, can I apply for a second loan at a later date?
So you're making one application under EIDL. The 10K is not the loan. That's just an advance that you're getting that's going to be forgiven. And then a case manager will be in touch with you within 2 weeks to discuss an actual loan amount. And that loan amount is out at 6 months of your average monthly expense. And that's the loan that you will repay over 30 years. And that's the one that's deferred for 12 months. So that's one loan. Parallel to that, or in addition to that, you can apply for the Paycheck Protection Program loan, the PPP loan. That loan came live today. Some banks have begun processing those loans today. Most banks have pushed back a little bit. They need a bit more time to understand the regulations around that loan. I'm guessing they'll be more active in processing PPP loan requests on Monday. And so, yes, you can apply for an EIDL and apply for a PPP. So, Liz, if it's okay, I'd like to give a brief overview of PPP. And
yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Because then I can share the strategy that we are recommending based on the availability of these two loans. So the PPP is a loan that you have to make through the bank. You cannot fill out the form and just submit it to SBA. You have to work with your bank. We're encouraging clients to check in with the banks that they bank with for their business account. Check in with your bank and ask them, are you processing PPPs? If you can give me one moment, I have a brief list of banks that we know have agreed to process these loans. And I'm going to pull that up right now on my screen. Let's see. So here's a current list that we have. It's not exhaustive, but we know that American Riviera, Bank of America, Coast Hills, Chase, Pacific Western, Wells Fargo, and Pacific Premier Bank have agreed to process these PPP loans. So check with your bank first. Banks are giving, for the most part, are giving priority to their client base, to their existing client base, which is completely understandable. They're checking in with their clients, they're giving them priority service to process PPPs. If your bank is not processing PPPs, then contact us and we will try and figure out which banks are accepting non-clients to help process PPPs. But unfortunately, this is not something you can do without the bank. You have to submit through the bank. It is the bank that will submit the loan to the SBA for you. The PPP, big picture, it's a 2-year term for the loan. The interest rate is 0.5%. So a very, very low interest rate. The PPP, you apply for it. We are recommending that it can only be used, sorry, let's take a step back. It can only be used to pay payroll, interest on your mortgage payments for the business, just the interest, not the principal, rent, and utilities. We are recommending that you max out that loan for payroll because the entirety spent on payroll will be forgiven by the SBA. So the more you use to cover payroll costs, the more will get forgiven. That is complete debt forgiveness. So the strategy that the overarching strategy that we're recommending is use PPP for payroll as much as you can, and then use your EIDL loan to pay all other expenses, other non-payroll expenses. And that's just a strategy to be able to maximize your access to funding. The exact rule of thumb on PPP is Of the entire forgiven amount under the PPP loan, 75% must have been used for payroll. So that's one of the conditions that they've given us, but we're recommending just use 100% of it for payroll and try and get 100% forgiveness on that loan. So that's everything I can share on those two loans at this point in time. And so now, based on that knowledge, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, so I do have a couple of questions here, and we'll get to the questions that are in the questions in the chat in just a moment. But first of all, if I'm a sole proprietor and I have no employees, can I still apply for the payroll protection program? And what documents am I going to need in order to apply for that?
Yeah, sole proprietors, self-employed can apply for EIDL and they can apply for PPP. Yes. It is likely that what will be asked for backup documentation is your tax return for 2018. The SBA completely understands that most people do not have 2019 ready. They're looking at 2018. You may be asked for a personal financial statement. We're not sure exactly the entirety of the backup documentation they're asking for, but when they came out with EIDL, they were asking for the 2017 and 18 tax returns, a personal financial statement. Even for people who are applying as businesses, they want to see capacity to repay the loan. So they want to see your personal financial situation. What is your current asset and liability situation at a personal level? They want to see your schedule of liabilities, which also known as the profit and loss statement for 2019. So the P&L for 2019, they want to see, and that's just to determine to help determine the loan amount. What's the revenue that's been coming in? What are your expenses? Has there been revenue loss as of Q1, Q2 of 2020? You do need to showcase revenue loss for both of these loans. So if you can prove that you've had revenue loss, they need to look at revenue and expenses to see that there's been revenue loss. Then they can discuss loan amounts. By the way, on PPP, I explained the cap of the loan, the maximum amount you can obtain under EIDL. Under PPP, it's your average monthly payroll cost in 2019. So what's the average monthly amount that you're spending on payroll in 19 multiplied by 2.5? So they're looking at payroll cost for 19 multiplied by 2.5 to determine the maximum amount of the loan that you can get under PPP. It doesn't mean that you cannot spend a portion of that loan amount on rent and utilities. So it is the Paycheck Protection Program. So they're looking at your payroll. They want you to use it for payroll. Only the amount being used for payroll will be forgiven, but it doesn't mean that you cannot use it to pay rent and utilities. If you want to use it for that, that's fine.
May I speak to that as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm doing it for a client of mine. Payroll includes what you're paying out in wages, and it's what you're paying out in health insurance and any retirement benefits. For the calculation, you cannot use what you're paying out in taxes, payroll taxes. So you want to maximize what you're asking for. And it's also my understanding to get full forgiveness of it, you have to spend it in 8 weeks.
That's right. So the idea between EIDL, the intention behind EIDL is to give companies a 6-month runway to make sure you can weather this storm, stay on your feet, and just ramp back up once we get out of the COVID situation. With PPP, it's let's figure out before we do massive layoffs, before we do some more take more drastic measures, here's 8 weeks worth of payroll, keep your people on board, and let's try and weather the storm more short term until we can all figure this.
So Judy, I just want to ask you to repeat the strategy that you suggested in relationship to the EIDL loan and the Paycheck Protection Program, because I think there's some people want to understand that, and then we have some questions specific to those things that I want to share with you and Lorna. Then we'll switch over and talk a little bit about the unemployment insurance through the state, so or through this stimulus package. So can you repeat that strategy that you mentioned earlier?
Absolutely. And just one other item of clarification per Lorna's comment, as far as how you determine payroll. We've gotten a lot of questions from the owners of the business. How much can they claim for their compensation? They can only claim up to a maximum of $100,000. So they're capped at $100K. But you do, I mean, assuming that you paid yourself at least $100,000 in some way, shape, or form. So it could have been through distributions, through some form of payment guarantee, some kind of deal that you set up with your entity. But owners of the business can only claim up to $100K. Anything beyond that cannot be claimed as part of payroll. So that's just another little distinction to keep in mind. So the overall strategy that we're recommending at this point in time is apply title. If nothing else, then at least that 10K emergency grant. It is capped at 10K. And whatever other loan portion you can get in addition to that, great. It's a 30-year term. Take advantage of that. And it is a low interest rate, 3.75%. Parallel to that, also apply for PPP, because PPP will be forgiven. You will not need to pay back that loan if you're using it to cover payroll. So get that loan, use that money to pay your employees, try and keep your head above water for the next 8 weeks. That loan will be forgiven. You will not need to pay it back. And then you can start tapping into your idle loan for other expenses to stay afloat. And maybe the idle loan will keep you going for another 6 months beyond that. So that's the strategy. Apply for both. Reserve any money you can get under PPP to pay payroll.
Okay, great. So here's a question. How does a small business calculate payroll for the Paycheck Protection Program if employees were hired in the last few months and are not fully captured in the last 12? So prior to that, it was just the owner, right, and some other contractors. The payroll is going to be higher going forward, but how do I figure that out?
Good question. I mean, it is a moving target. It's as of the date that you apply for the loan, it's going to be your best, estimate as of the time you submit your application. Yeah, let me see. I have a fact sheet here that I want to pull up. Lorna, if you have any information and want to jump in, feel free to jump in. I'm going to pull up my fact sheet so I can read. This is from the Treasury Department, so I'm going to pull it up and see what detailed info is.
All right, so here's what I know right now about it. It is a moving target. The real thing is that if they are not in the prior quarter, that would be the one ending in Q4 2019, you will have payroll records for this past quarter that will show that they were employees. So that will be easy enough to prove up because you will have those records and you could use those. There is, I believe, on the form when you're filling it out, it will tell you which employees you may include. They have to have been employed at a certain date, and perhaps Judy will be able to show what exactly that time cutoff is, when you can actually include them in your count. And so you want to look at that, and the real advantage is that you could get 2.5 times what your qualified or eligible payroll numbers are.
So another question is the PPP for self-employed 1099 as well as the PUA?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
No.
And what about interest? Is the interest deferred for 12 months on the loan?
Good question.
That's a good question. I think, let me see. No, I think the interest.
Well, that.
No, I think the interest does run during that 12-month period, but I'm 99% sure on that. I can. I'll find out, and Liz,
Okay.
is there share the information with all attendees once these question marks that we still have?
Yes, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Right? We have a follow-up that we can do that will allow us to share the recording as well as any additional handouts or answers that we can provide. So we can certainly do that. So I'm going to keep moving forward with these questions because there are a lot of questions and we still haven't even gotten to the unemployment insurance side of things. So I was told that you're not able to apply for the EIDL if you already have a line of credit in place with your bank. Is this correct? So I'm going to tell you my experience. I don't think that's correct. I think, and I don't know what the rules are. I know this morning I did get a letter from my bank, an email and a phone call, letting me know that they were ready to help me with any of these things that I needed to pursue. And I do have a line of credit with the bank. So I'm not really sure if that's a bank-specific thing or it's based on your relationship and your history with the bank. Do either of you ladies know?
I think it'll be taken as a consideration, but I don't think it will bar you from getting a disaster loan, which is what the EIDL is.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think you certainly can apply. It might have an effect on your when they evaluate your capacity to repay.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're looking at, are you going to be able to repay this loan? What does that look like? But for PPP, if you're going to use it for payroll and it's going to be forgiven, there's going to be a lot of flexibility there. And having an existing lock in place should not affect you too much.
My recommendation is something that Judy talked about as far as a strategy. Apply for whatever you can apply for because they will tell you whether you're eligible or not.
And ideally, if you have a business relationship with your bank, you have access to advisors on the banking side that understand your business and that can help you with solutions that will help you get through this. But here's a really good question. Are all businesses receiving the full $10,000 or is there a sliding scale?
It is a sliding scale. It's up to $10,000. Originally, when it came out Monday, it was just a 10K checkbox, and then they just, I noticed they edited the wording a day and a half ago, up to 10,000.
Okay, so if a business gets a federal grant money, can it qualify for these programs? So for example, our small business gets research grant money.
The EIDL is disaster funding, and the grant funding is a separate animal.
So is that a yes, or we don't know?
So they're different agencies for the government. So I'm going to say again, apply for everything that you can apply for and let the banks sort it out because disaster loans are different than grant funding from the IRS, from the government. So I'm going to say you get both.
Okay, great. And then just to clarify, is the $10,000 advance for sole proprietors who work from home or only people with employees and commercial rent?
All applicants. All applicants.
Okay, and here is a question about, in the application, there is a question regarding place of birth and citizenship, and just wondering whether this will exclude immigrants.
Yes. I believe that's I believe that's a yes. The only citizen qualifies.
Right. I think you have to be a citizen, but you don't necessarily have to be born in the U.S.
Right.
Okay, and here's someone who says they've applied but they didn't see questions on expenses and wondering if they need to go in and redo it.
It depends. If they applied after Monday, they probably completed all the boxes they needed to complete. If they were able to submit and then got there's an SBA loan application number that pops up on the screen. If they obtained an SBA loan application number on that screen, they're good to go. That means they completed all the boxes they needed to. If they applied prior to Monday, then yes, they do need to reapply. Anyone who applied before Monday, or midnight on Sunday, needs to go back and reapply.
Okay.
Cool. And then again, will I qualify for EIDL if I have no employees?
Yes. Sole proprietors, self-employed, gig workers can apply for EIDL.
Okay, and I started my business early last year, but have not filed taxes for 2019 yet. Do I need to wait until I file taxes?
No, you can apply right now.
Okay. And then someone wanted to know how to apply, so I'm going to go back and just kind of reinforce. If you go to the SBA.gov website, there is a whole section on disaster assistance. It's under funding programs. It's on the screen now. And for those of you that are listening on the telephone, it's SBA.gov. When you get to that front page, there's a list across the top of the website. The place that you need to go is to the funding programs. And then for the actual disaster loan, when you click that button, there's a little red button that you click. It takes you to the disaster loan assistance application. So that would be where you go to apply for the EIDL. And then let's see, it says here, does the Paycheck Protection Program cover guaranteed programs to earners who work at the business as their source of income? Let me see what else it says. In addition to their hourly employees. So just making sure, again, that question is about whether or not owners are covered through the Paycheck Protection Program.
Up to, they can claim up to 100K for the amount of payroll as far as in the calculation of the total loan amount that they can qualify for.
Okay. And another question about, it's really available to the bank of your choosing, or the PPP can be applied for through the bank of your choosing, or is it just the banks that you mentioned earlier?
The banks I mentioned are the ones that we know for a fact have agreed to process these loans. Of your choosing, if you find one who'll process it, go for it, because it's going to be hard to, the banks are going to be overwhelmed. There's going to be a lot of demand. So again, the recommendation is whoever you bank with, start with that bank, because most banks are providing priority service to their client base. So if you already have a relationship and a bank account with a certain bank, check in with that bank and ask them, are you processing the PPP loans? If they are, then get in line and get in the queue to work with them immediately. If your bank is not processing PPP loans, check in with the Cal Poly SBDC. We will also share, I'm going to share a link with you, Liz, that we can share with everyone. People can sign up with the SBDC. Great. Signed up. We e-blast information once a day, and it is all the latest, most updated information in connection with these loans. And we will try and share a list of approved or banks that we know are taking on potentially non-clients to help them process their PPPs. We'll share that info as soon as we have it available. There is a link on the SBA website where you can type in to find an SBA approved lender, where you type in your zip code and the list pops up. The problem with that list, I want to kind of give everyone a heads up, is they've included a list of all SBA bank lenders pre-COVID. So
Oh,
within that
okay.
list, there's many that are not processing PPP loans. So you can check the list, but the odds are you might get banks listed on there that actually are not going to be processing these loans.
Okay, and can you just apply for some of the grant money without taking a loan?
These are loans. They are loans. The grant piece, and again, I'm calling it a grant. The SBA does not want to call it a grant. Under the EIDL program, it's a loan advance that you don't need to repay. So if you, under that language, my guess is they're not just going to give you 10K without trying to qualify you for the loan. That being said, you could accept a loan, treat it as a line of credit. If you realize that you don't really need it, you can repay it right away. There is no prepayment penalty fee. You can pay it back. There's no penalty for paying it back immediately. You can sit on it. They're deferred for 12 months, so you could potentially sit on it for a couple of months, realize that, okay, wow, business is ramping back up. We're out of the storm. We're doing fine. We're going to get back on our feet. We don't need this loan. I'm just going to pay it right back. And maybe you'll have run some interest for a couple of months and you'll have lost a couple $100, but it's probably well worth the effort.
Okay, great. We're going to take two more questions and then we're going to jump over to the unemployment side, to Lorna's side. So on EIDL, can a client just apply for a $10,000 loan, receive the $10,000 advance, and then have nothing to pay back?
So that's the scenario we just discussed.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. And then the last thing that I want to share, actually two more things, then we'll jump over. I applied on Sunday. My application number was 8,809. I received an application confirmation. Should I reapply even though I have a confirmation for my initial application?
So if you applied under version 2 of the portal, if you applied under the version that requested all the backup docs, there was one application where you had to provide Form 5, Form 413, and Form 2202, and Form 4605T. There were all these forms, and it actually was hard to tell that we were filling out forms. It felt like you were just filling out boxes and boxes and boxes of information. If you provided a schedule of liabilities, if you provided a personal financial statement, if you provided authorization to access tax returns, it was a much more expansive request than you were under the old version of EIDL. So I'm trying to, and the new version came out Monday, but I don't know what time on Monday. So, did this person apply at midnight on Sunday? I don't know. They filled out a pretty extensive, all the information I just listed, and that it was a fairly long process, then yes, they probably need to reapply because they did not apply under the short version. If when they applied, there was no option to check the 10K box, then that was the old version. That was version 2. Yeah. And so yes, they need to go back in and apply for version 3. Basically, let's focus on that. If they had the opportunity to check the box for 10K, then they're good to go. If they applied under a version where there was no option to select the 10K, that was the old version. So yes, they need to go back in and reapply.
Wonderful, thank you. So I want to go ahead and shift gears and let's talk about the disaster unemployment assistance. So again, for those of you that are on the phone, what's on the screen is the link to the Employment Development Department State of California website. And basically, I'm just going to show you what that looks like here, if my computer will work. And then while Lorna's talking, I will look through the questions that we have and again, feed more of those questions to Judy and Lorna. So Lorna, why don't you go ahead and get started, and I'll do some homework here behind the scenes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity, and I'm really glad everybody is here to get updated on this. Okay, so regular unemployment benefits are for employees, but the self-employed can also get unemployment through the state of California when a disaster has been declared within the state. And that's called DUA, Disaster Unemployment Assistance. Now, it's a federal program, but it is in fact applied for through the EDD. And I have helped a few people, and so they are self-employed, and it looks like a regular unemployment form. And it does until you get like to the second page before the end. There is a whole section that just says supplemental form for DUA, Disaster Unemployment Assistance. Now, I will be providing the links. I see that Liz has provided the one, but there's another one that's a fact sheet. So this DUA also benefits regular employees. If they have exhausted all their other benefits, if a disaster has been declared in the state, then they're eligible for it as well. But I want to really speak to what's available for the self-employed. So a self-employed means that you're a sole proprietor. If you are a corporation, you can receive a paycheck from your corporation and you're eligible for regular unemployment. So this DUA really only applies to the self-employed or the gig workers. You fill out the form and you get the benefits, and I got some information about what that is. So on the low end, it'll be about $164 a week. On the high end, it'll be about $450 a week. The waiting period is waived. That's what's really important here as part of the DUA, is that the waiting period has been waived. So you would be eligible for the funds immediately. So there's another provision called PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Compensation. This applies to both regular employees, and it also applies to the self-employed. So when you fill out your DUA with the EDD, and I'm hoping that you're able to hear those acronyms. So Employment Development Department, you fill out your regular unemployment, you indicate that you're a self-employed individual, you fill out the application, the supplemental part of the form, and then you will also become eligible for the pandemic unemployment compensation. And this is the one you've been hearing about that is $600. And it's $600 per week through July 31st, 2020. And it's intended to provide full wage replacement for the average worker, but is also going to be made available to the self-employed. So this is a really powerful piece, and this is part of the CARES Act, is this PUA amount that's supposed to have been added on. And it's not prorated. It's just fixed. It's a fixed amount that everybody is going to get for this little tiny window of time. The CARES Act also extends this emergency assistance for individuals who do not this is that part, otherwise eligible for unemployment benefits. That's the self-employed. So if you are a business owner with a corporation and you don't have any work coming in, you basically are furloughing yourself and you apply for unemployment and you get the regular unemployment and you would get the PUA added onto that. If you are a sole proprietor, then you can also apply through the regular unemployment feature, and you fill out that you are self-employed and you fill out all the extra information for the DUA coverage, which is available to the self-employed. So I think that pretty much covers it, and I can answer any questions. It's pretty simple, just fill out the paperwork.
Okay, great. So let me just share with you some of the questions that I received earlier. Will the unemployment be based on my 2018 tax return?
No. So unemployment is always based on the year prior. So if you are a sole proprietor, they are going to be asking you, what you earned. So there will be some additional information that they will be asking. So it's not based on 2018, it'll be based on 2019.
So if I don't take a paycheck, but I show the profits as my income, how do I make that calculation?
Well, there's a really good question. Hold on a second. Why don't you ask me another question? I'm going to pull up the form.
Okay.
I kept a copy of a PDF version of it. Let me see if it asks for that calculation, how that's going to be determined.
Okay, in the meantime, I have another question. If I'm still earning a small fraction of my normal income, I own my own business, I'm still earning a small fraction of my normal income, can I still claim unemployment and get partial benefits if I'm not completely out of work?
Yes. Yes. It's always that way. Yes. So you can. You just have to show what you are earning. So that's completely available to you.
Okay, and then we have a number of questions here. A question about restating true payroll costs. So can you please restate true payroll costs?
You're talking
And I
about
guess either one of you. I think either one of you could answer that.
That's on the PPP, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll let Judy answer that while I'm looking.
I think Judy
Unmute.
muted herself. Oh, there we go. That's okay.
For payroll costs included for employers when you're making those calculations to qualify for PPP, they're looking at salaries, wages, commissions, any type of similar compensation, any payments of cash tips or equivalent, payment for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, any allowances for dismissal or separation, payment required for group health care benefits, including insurance premiums, payment of retirement benefits, and payments of state and local taxes assessed on the compensation of the employee. So those are all the items you can include as an employer to calculate that payroll. And for sole proprietors, independent contractors, self-employed people who can also apply for a PPP loan, they will look at the sum of payments of any compensation or any type of income that you've received as a sole proprietor, independent contractor, income, net earnings from your self-employment up to $100,000.
Okay. So there's a couple of requests for you to share the local banks. And what I think I'm going to do, everyone, is just in the follow-up email, we'll make sure that we have that list included in there, as well as the links to the various websites that we shared with you today. And I believe, Judy, you mentioned there was something that you have that we can add to it that you guys are doing through the SBDC that gives people a blast about what's happening. Is that right?
Correct. And maybe what I can do is I'll add that. Let's see if I can see it myself. So if I put it in the chat, will everyone see it?
Yeah, if you just need to scroll down to where it says everyone, just choose everyone and everyone should be able to see it. If not, you can send it to me and then I can resend it.
So I'm sending right. Yes.
Okay. Let me see.
I think it only went to the organizer, so maybe that's you, Liz. So I sent a link. Okay. Anyone, and I'm encouraging everyone to click on that link. If you're already a client of the SBDC, you're in our system, just shoot us an email. If you're not a client of the SBDC, click on the link I just sent. We'll assign you to lead consultant and we can respond to additional questions one-on-one. And you'll also be part of our mailing list and you'll start receiving all of our e-blasts on a daily basis regarding all these updates on these loans.
Okay, cool. Well, let me, I want to get to we're going to keep doing the questions. So everybody just bear with me here because I just messed up my computer. I apologize for that. I'm trying to do too many things at once. So on the screen now are the 3 organizations that are part of this call. Mission Community Services Women's Business Center, Cal Poly's Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the SBDC, and SCORE San Luis Obispo, and their 3 office phone numbers. All of them have people who are ready, willing, and able to help you with the action you need to take for your business. So their phone numbers are on the screen right now. I'll read them out in a couple minutes, but I do want to get back to some of these questions because I think there's still some really good questions that we need to get answers to folks for. So bear with me again. Thank you for your patience.
So
here's a
could
question.
Could I finish one answer? Okay, so
yes, ma'am.
The question was regarding how they're going to calculate what their earnings were in order to get the disaster unemployment benefits. That was a really good question. I don't see anything in the form at all that I have that asks for that information. So it will probably be a follow-on, or it may have been updated on the electronic version, which I can't see unless I'm able to actually process through every single page. So what you will need is to have your records for the period of time that they ask for. So if you don't have your bookkeeping up to date, get your bookkeeping up to date. They will tell you what section they want you to give the information to. Okay.
Okay, great. So let me, again, I'm going to scroll down to some questions here that I saw. Just again, reinforcing, does payroll include payment to freelancers, virtual assistants, 1099? So does payroll include payment to those 3 categories? Freelancers, yeah. Virtual assistants, 1099 employees or contractors.
If they are not employees, if they are independent contractors, if they're 1099, no. They are not included because, again, the theory is those people can apply for PPP themselves. They
right,
should not
right.
As part of your payroll as an employer.
Yeah.
Let's see. Will workers' comp be considered a forgiveness amount even if it's not considered in the loan amount?
I'm not seeing where that's one of the approved expenses for the PPP, that only the payroll and payroll related, which would be health insurance and those kinds of things, and rent are approved to be used with that money. But so I didn't see anything where insurance was an eligible expense.
Okay, if you laid off an employee prior to COVID for cause and you want to rehire the position, can you use the funds from PPL to do that?
My understanding would be yes.
Yes, as long as you're using PPP, you can rehire, and as long as you're using PPP to pay wages, you're fine.
But you cannot reduce the amount of wages that you're already paying existing employees.
So a caveat, I think you can reduce, you can reduce what you're paying if you're deciding to furlough, but that the amount that you reduce it by will not be forgiven. Right,
correct.
Lorna?
Right, correct. It will not be forgiven. If you reduce their wages, but
you
keep
can.
them, you can, but it won't be forgiven. It won't be considered.
Is rent and utilities forgiven or included in payroll, and healthcare costs are not forgiven? Correct?
It's all forgiven.
The healthcare,
rent, utilities, and healthcare are forgiven?
No. Healthcare is part of the payroll piece. Rent, utilities is not, or it is, but an infinite amount is. It can only represent 25% of the total forgiven amount.
Okay, cool. So this is a really good question. My payroll has gone down since business has gone down in the last 3 weeks. Should I be paying my hourly employees, and this is a restaurant, even if they aren't working and have applied for unemployment? Can I save this loan for when we fully reopen?
Which loan? If it's the PPP, you have to use it up in 8 weeks for it to be forgiven.
Although, I mean, technically, by the time you apply for the loan and obtain the loan, we're probably 3 weeks out. So technically, it says of the date that they obtain the loan. So they'll start paying payroll at that time. So, I mean, there's a bit of leeway on timing there. There's probably a 2 to 4 week time period that you can play with.
Okay, so let me see what
I'm going to
else we
say
have here.
I'm going to say documentation is going to be very important for the timing if you want to prove it so that you can get forgiven. So I think all of the guidelines have been laid out very clearly. So encourage you to document when you got the money and look at how you can make those payments within that 8-week window after you receive the money.
Question about whether or not real estate agents qualify for this.
Yeah, there's absolutely.
Yeah, they would qualify for if they're self-employed, they would qualify for the DUA as well as the PUA. If they have employees, they can apply for the PPP and they can apply for the EDIL. Yeah.
Wonderful. So to apply for the PPP, that's through their banking relationship. Where do they actually get that process started for the PPP?
They have to go through their bank. That's what we've touched on a few times. Whoever you bank with, call your bank. That's your number one priority. If you want to get the PPP, as soon as we get off this call your bank, ask them if they're processing the PPP loans, and if they are, you know, we can. There are some forms available online, but the banks have them readily available as well. But just communicate with your bank, establish the relationship with your bank, find a bank that will process the PPP for you. That's the number one step that you need to take.
All the banks are really scrambling, and they have Wells Fargo already has theirs up, and they have links to the forms, and they have links to the updates and when they're going to be accepting them. I would suspect that most of the other banks go to their website first, because a lot of them have already got links and stuff up to support their client base in the community.
Another question, can PPP work if your business is unessential? It's closed right now, but I want to try and give some work to my employees that are outside of their normal duties, things like data entry or customer retention calls, things like that.
Absolutely. PPP is available to all businesses, to all self-employed, to all independent contractors. PPP is available. You don't need to be an essential business to qualify for PPP.
Okay, does payroll cost include what we're paying to the payroll company and or matching employer taxes?
No. No, it's payroll, it's wages only. It's wages only, and except for it doesn't allow you to include for the calculation health insurance, any retirement contributions that the employer is making, but does not include employer taxes. And then that's how it's calculated, and then how it's used has some different parameters.
Okay, great. Again, I'm just scrolling. Some of the questions are the same, asking, you know, how to apply, whether or not you can, you know, reopen or rehire employees or use the money to allocate work for employees to do from home. I think we talked a little bit about if your services are decreasing, like you're still offering services, you're still getting paid, but I believe, Lorna, you said they could still apply for the disaster unemployment
Yes.
and receive partial benefits, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and then looking through to see what else. We're almost right at the hour, so I want to scroll through and see, no payment penalty on EIDL.
Correct.
Okay, a question that came up, do we ask for what we need, or do we just apply and they will tell us what they can give us?
They will tell you. So you do not make a determination on the loan amount that you want. The SBA will do that. And like I said, the rule of thumb is on the EIDL, 6 months of expenses. So basically, just as a big picture rule of thumb, what are your accounts payable on average for 1 month in 2019? Multiply that by 6, and that's the maximum you will be able to qualify for, capped at $2 million max. And under PPP, how much payroll on average are you paying each month for 1 month in 2019 on average? Multiply that number by 2.5, and that's the maximum amount that you'll be able to get under that loan. And again, and that one is capped at $10 million for the larger companies that have a large payroll.
And for the PPP, there is no personal guarantee required. However, on the EIDL, there is after $200,000. You will have to give a personal guarantee for the loan.
Okay, and can we pay off this the 30-year loan ASAP and decrease the interest payment? Can we pay this off early? I believe you both said yes to that.
Yeah.
Yes. No.
Cool. Well, no prepayment penalty, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. I want to check in with you ladies before I keep going. If the timing still works for you, if you'd like me to go through a few more of these questions, or if we need to wrap up, I totally understand that, because what we can do, for those of you who are still with us and still listening, we can take the questions that you've asked in the chat box, get them to our two experts, and then get some responses that we can send out to you in the follow-up message that goes out. So Lorna and Judy, you tell me what will work best for you and your schedule.
Yeah, I can stay on for another 10 minutes, no problem.
I can also stay on.
Okay, so I am going to look at, I have a number of questions about the PUA not being available until April 10th. Is that correct, or do you guys know?
Wrong question, just so you know. So it's the PPP that's not available until April 10th. But the PUA,
so the payment, it's the payment protection program that's not available until April 10th. But the unemployment.
Yeah. So businesses are available for the payment. The Paycheck protection program is available as of today, as soon as they open it. And then it becomes available for independent contractors and some of the others on the 10th.
Okay, and that's the Paycheck protection program.
Yeah, it's that one.
Okay. And someone can actually apply for all four of those things: the DUA, the PUA, the PPP, and the EIDL. I have to laugh because I have this thing about acronyms. But literally, you could apply for all of those things, right?
So you do not need to apply for the PUA. It's an automatic if you apply for the DUA. So the DUA is for the self-employed. It's the disaster unemployment assistance. So if you apply for that, the PUA, which is part of the CARES package, will apply to it automatically. So you don't have to apply for it. Okay, and yes, they can, and so they can apply for the other two. So the CARES provides 3 things. It provides the PPP, the economic disaster EIDL, and it provides for the PUA.
But realistically, I mean, the 2 loans, they're going to look at your capacity to repay. They are taking that into consideration. If there's no capacity to repay those loans, you likely will not qualify and will not obtain those loans. So the reality is EIDL, the EIDL loan, the emergency loan, and the Paycheck Protection Program loan are for business owners, even sole proprietors, self-employed business owners who are hoping to reboot their business and who are just trying to weather this storm. The unemployment benefits are for those. I've come across a few sole proprietors who have decided to shut down their business because they were solo entrepreneurs. They have no more business. They have to shut it down. There's no other resource. They're not going to apply for a loan. They've decided to apply with EDD to get unemployment benefits. So it's not a free for all. It's not the Wild West, even though it might feel like it. It's not. These loans are being processed by case managers, by banks. They want to make sure that there is a liability there. You will owe, you're committing to reimbursing these loans unless you can get forgiveness because you've used the money to pay your employees. We're talking about real money, with strings attached. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. So I do have one more thing, and then we're going to wrap up, and it's regarding unemployment benefits. If an employer offers voluntary furloughs prior to implementing mandatory furloughs, will employees who accept still be eligible for unemployment assistance?
So I don't actually know the answer to that. My guess is yes. Unemployment for employees is controlled by the EDD and is not actually part of this disaster unemployment protection plan. This is under the regular unemployment. And usually how that works is you apply, they qualify you, they determine how much you're going to get, and then if there's any adjustments based on other revenues that you have to report, then they take care of that. So employees who have been furloughed or temporarily furloughed, they should just go ahead and apply for their unemployment. I hope that answers the question.
Lorna. Yeah, thank you. So again, it's a little bit after. I do want to respect that everybody's got lots of things going on and lots of things to do. So I'm going to wrap up now. So again, SCORE, you can reach SCORE at 805-547-0779. You can reach the SBDC at 805-756-5171. And you can reach the Women's Business Center, Mission Community Services Corp. at 805-595-1357. Grateful to Judy Mahan and to Lorna Whitaker for being with us today. This has been an incredibly informative session, and I encourage those of you that are on the session with us and or who will listen to the recording later to reach out, get your questions asked and hopefully answered. Lots of people in the community are ready, willing, and able to help you do the things you need to do to get your financial foundation fortified. So you can visit websites, you can schedule virtual consultations, you can leverage the knowledge of these great resource teams to help you move forward. And just quickly to wrap up, our next session will be next Friday, April 10th at noon. I'm really excited. I spoke with Kathy Markov this morning. She is going to put on a session for us called Focus on Plan B and Discover Opportunities. So I encourage you to visit the Women's Business Center Mission Community Services website to sign up and register for that. Again, Lorna and Judy, thank you so much for your time today. A reminder to everyone, the recording and an email will go out as follow-up. We appreciate everyone's patience with us, and so go out and make it a great day. Take care.
Thank you, Liz. And if I can jump in really quick, please share my email, jmayhan@calpoly.edu. People will have a better chance of a response through that email than on our phone number. We're all working remote. None of us are in the office at this time. Our whole staff is remote. So just shoot us an email and you'll be more likely to get a response. Feel free to share my email and I'll just share it with the staff. Thank you.
Right.
We'll do that as well. Thanks so much.